it's easier to find people that you can relate to if you're vulnerable, and you have to take the initiative first, because I think a lot of people, especially in Asia, is like, oh, we have that front that we don't really open up so easily to different people. So having that extra step to open up, to have relationships, to go through tough times, good times, etc. Yeah, I think that's like a common theme. Like everyone going through sharing a particular story, they don't do it alone.
Good day, guys. Welcome back to the new episode on Transformative Purpose. I'm very excited today because I am going to be speaking to a colleague of mine at Microsoft. We met a few weeks ago over the same passion. This gentleman, Ray, he also runs his own podcast. It's called Talk La. I'll let him introduce what this podcast is about. But a great gentleman, he's an enthusiast about AI and data, super disciplined guy, and he's been working out for the last 10 years, I think, working out 4 or 5 times a week. So we'll learn a lot to learn from this gentleman. So, Ray, welcome to the show, and super lucky to have you here.
Thank you very much, Aaron. I think this is just some backstory we had. Like, this is actually the first time, even though I'm running a podcast of my own, but this is my first time being a guest on someone's podcast. So it's really an honor to be part of this whole transformative purpose kind of journey. So just very briefly about myself, right? I mean, if people listening out there, you can hear, oh, is this dude from Singapore, from Malaysia? Yeah. So just give a bit of background of myself. So I'm actually born and raised in Malaysia, in the city, Kuala Lumpur. And then I decided to do the normal route to further my education in Singapore, because that's the normal route. If you're a good student, you get A's and everything. Yeah, you typically try to get a better education in Singapore. But long story short, I think I thought Singapore was a place that was too standard for me. I don't think there's a lot of interesting stuff. Not to say it's in a bad way, but I thought like, okay, Hong Kong was probably somewhat more interesting. And that's why I took the leap of faith. It's very uncommon for Malaysians to, end up in Hong Kong if you're not in the Chinese education background. So I took the leap of faith, went to HKUST, and truth be told, yeah, I'm here for the last, 5 years. So pretty much half of my youth in Hong Kong, most of my working life. And yeah, touching on the podcast, like why it's called Talk La and the whole idea behind me starting the podcast. It's actually quite interesting because it was not my idea. I'm actually co-hosted with one of my buddies, Andrian. So he really wanted to start the podcast, but I was not really inclined. But he talked me into it and say like, oh, he's going to do everything. Yeah. So long story short, I think we agreed to actually do the podcast together, and we really dig deep to really think about what kind of topics, what kind of issues we want to talk about consistently for every week. So I think the last 4 or 5 years when you actually start working, there's a lot of like a mismatch within your fulfillment, what makes you happy, and how much freedom you actually get at work. Is your life structured for the rest of your life for 9 to 7? That's bad if you do things and look forward to just TGIF weekends and Monday blues. So we hope that, and we know that actually a lot of our friends or young adults or people that just started working actually face this scenario. So we dug deep and we realized that, hey, how come there are some successful people within our friends that are so happy that they have some interesting perspective, whether it's a story or an experience that they went through. And that's why we really want to, every week we invite some new guests to have perspective so that they share to the young listeners, whether you're a teenager, whether you're young adults, or even someone like from different country. Hopefully they can relate and have something to their life. And why it's called Talk La, I think it's very obvious. Like, okay, I'm from Malaysia. We want to have this Malaysian kind and Hong Kong kind of branding and talk, because essentially Talk La is very casual, right? We can touch upon anything, whether it's something personal, whether it's casual, whether it's a very serious topic. Yeah. So that's basically the whole idea and the purpose of why we started this Talk La, and a bit of myself.
Well, thanks for the introduction. Hey, I know you. One of the purposes for your podcast is to help people transition from teens, young, adulthood to I guess the formal adulthood. I would say. I guess speaking from your perspective or speaking from your experiences, what were some of your surprises coming from maybe before graduating from university to maybe looking for the first internship and then slowly working your way through sort of the corporate ladder?
Yeah, I think given my brief, I think the beginning is very exciting. I think the struggle is like once you actually landed a job.
What was the exciting part?
And then, the exciting part? I think in university, people tend to, I think just putting myself back a few years put myself in that mode. I think the most challenging part that people struggle with, especially in Hong Kong or any country, right? Like you have to now land a good internship. And after that, then you land a good graduate job. I think people take too much stress on that side. I think that's important, but you should have some sort of checklist approach, because people I'll dig deep into this checklist approach later. But I think why people struggle so much, because I think university students or people in general tend to succumb to peer pressure. They look at their peers and everything, and they look at what people are telling you what is good. So people eventually, I need to get a banking job. I need to go management consulting. That's a very Hong Kong kind of industry. If you're an engineer, you're like, I need to go to civil engineering. Yeah. So hopefully, I think the part that I wanted to bring out is like, you need to really understand what you really want, and don't just go for the big brands. Yeah. So I think a lot of people, top students, whether they like it or not, they just, I'm qualified. I have the grades. I have the good background, and then they go for it. But instead, I think another approach is like, you should actually try out different companies, whether small or big ones, as long as it's in a particular industry that you think you can resonate, or you think you can add value in, or you think you want to pursue, try it. And once you actually try it, then you can know that, whether the culture, the work that you're doing, even though internships are actually very short. But I think it will give you an idea like, what kind of people they actually attract in the industry. And then for me, that's the approach that I did. I tried banking, and then I realized like, I'm actually just one small piece of the process, and the work for me is very repetitive. I'm just a small gear in the whole machine, right? Then I tried a different industry like technology, and then I realized like, it was my time at Meltwater, and then I realized that. So it's a software as a service company, online media intelligence, very young, fun, fast-paced, very sales-driven. And I realized the culture is very different from the other corporate that I work in the bank. And then I realized, I quite like it. I think there's growth in here. And I do see like I can add value at such a young age. And that's why when I'm actually taking the checklist through the way. And then when I actually graduate, I actually try to find for jobs that are in the technology. So I was very focused in just tech. I didn't look at any other thing, because it was from my experience that I resonated in the technology industry that led me to apply that. So I think a lot of people should use this kind of approach, unless you're already someone that you're born with a calling that you want to go into a certain industry. Then I think that's a different story. But I think most people, like 60, 70, 80% of people, don't exactly know what actually they truly want. And they succumb to peer pressure, and then they just dive into it, and then they get that mismatch and alignment.
Yeah. So is that quite common amongst your?
I would say because I'm going to HKUST, so everyone is like very well, like they already know what they want and in mind. But I think what's common is like, okay, sometimes if they do achieve what they want and then they stay on there, sometimes I think a lot of people get misaligned, like, that's something that they don't actually want. But they consciously still do it because I think the opportunity cost is quite high. Yeah. So I think at the end, I'm not saying like you need to live a life that like at the end of the day, like, really like no Monday blue kind of thing. Because at the end of the day, like touching back to, I think we had a conversation that actually the way that society is like running, it's quite sad that we all need to live in a system that you have your personal finances right. Money. So one of the big, like, depends how you prioritize your criteria. Like if climbing the corporate ladder is something that you like, and then etc., then whether you like it or not, you just stick through it. You get through life no matter what. Yeah, because you need that sense of security. Then you can find some sort of fulfillment or happiness in your hobbies, your side projects, podcasts, different. Yeah, so there's different ways of doing things. For some people are like, okay, they really want to start something on their own, and then they find their own fulfillment doing that. Or sometimes, they're very okay to not live. I mean, to do a job that they don't like, but still have a happy life. And they anchor it based on the family, based on fitness, etc. Things outside of work. Yeah.
I do think that, historically, looking at the way how we're raised, we are influenced by, heavily influenced by our parents. You know, how we were raised by our parents, by education. And I think education is a classic example where there's a filtering system. So since birth, and interestingly, I had a conversation with the author Her name is Aileen, is based in the States. So she recently wrote a book on personal goals, and the book is called 30 Goals. And she cites the same challenge that you just brought up. Many of us, we look at life or we set goals based on life stages or based on what other people tell us to do. Go get a job, go get a good college degree, get an internship. And none of these goals are actually related to personal fulfillment, to happiness, to finding our own purpose. And I think a lot of people are struggling with that. And to your point, we don't know until we try it. Like me, for example, so I'm a little older than you, but I still remember those days when I was trying to choose my majors back at university. I was deciding between medicine, law, and actuary, right? And I was thinking medicine and law are going to take 5-6 years. It took a bit too long, so I just chose something I didn't like. I chose actuary, even though I had no passion in maths. So, and I think what you just said is really spot on, right? You don't really know what you like until you try it. And when you are young, I think people should try as many things as they could, because when you're young, when you're in your 20s, that's when you have no baggages, you have less responsibilities. So now I have 2 kids, I have families, I have mortgages, there's a house to pay, and there's bills to pay. So it becomes the opportunity cost becomes a lot harder. It's not just you. So once you have a family, once you have kids, like your life doesn't revolve around you anymore. Your life actually revolves around your people in your household. So do you agree with that?
Yeah, I completely resonate with that. And I think just one, like, if there's one, like, a lot of takeaways from our guests and also through my learnings is like, try not to compare yourself with different people within the same age range. And okay, let's say you hit 30s, like I actually listened to Ellie's podcast 30-30s. I think it's a great one. But when you hit 30, you're expected to have some sort of financial independence, probably get a house, etc. Try not to let this, it's like back to what I mentioned, right? Like peer pressure, living to what society standards that they want you to live up to. So I think, just don't compare, and you do you, they do they. Yeah. And as long as you find something that you can anchor yourself and it adds value and it makes you fulfilled, I think that's all about life. Yeah.
And then when you get to a certain age, you start getting questions like, when are you getting married? When are you having kids? That's one of the worst questions you can ask somebody.
Yeah, I think all that, like, I think a lot, like, to be fair, I think in Asia, like, that's a lot of the pressures from the family itself. So I think parents do have some sort of responsibility to let the son, but I can understand, because like they grew up that way. So they thought that's how showing love is. And I think, like, touching upon relationship, right? Like, when it's like, it's really like, I think my whole life has been all about trial and error. Like, I wasn't born and known that, I want to be an artist. I want to be like a certain profession or a certain skill set. Some people are born with talent, I would say. I do believe in that. And whether they want to, really deep dive in those, that's their choice. But I think unfortunately or fortunately, I think I fall just like most people. They go out, they go to the normal education, and then, is there something very special about myself? I don't think so. You kind of have to find your way. And I think majority people are like that. You basically trial and error, and then you find like, this is where you think you can add value to society. And back to the question, like, Aaron, like, actually, have I ever found that calling or that purpose yet? The answer is still very blurry. I know what I like, I know what I don't like, and I'm still going through that whole checklist process to approach life. Yeah. And I think one advice to give is like, okay, you need to people always say you have to reflect, have to be self-aware. But sometimes it's quite hard to, where do I start? Like, how do I know? What kind of questions? So I think there's always a tip, like, okay, every day or like every week when you end, like, if there's something that made you happy, you went for a certain event, I think you can take out a notebook or write it on your phone on why that made you feel a certain way. And that after a while, you'll compile a list, and then you kind of know like, there's like common themes on what makes you happy and fulfilled, and what makes you, you don't really like, that kind of engagement, what sort of people. And then you basically can structure your life around that. Yeah. Because I really like the quote, like, you're the average of the top 5 people that you mix with. And then you actually, if you mix yourself with people, like-minded people, or you want to aspire to be like them, you end up being like just an average of those 5 groups of people. And I think that's very true.
And that's similar to the law of attraction, right?
Yep. For sure, for sure.
Hey, what's your touch on this earlier in the introduction? I know you're from our discussion, you're very disciplined. You work out 4 to 5 times a week, right? And you've been doing this for correct me if I'm wrong, last 10 years, for a very long time, basically. How did you keep up with that commitment? I mean, it's easy to get up and work out. So before we gave birth to the second child, I used to get up every day around 5 o'clock in the morning. I work out, for 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And I sort of stopped that in the last 2.5 months because of our additional member. And it's been hard. So my health has taken a toll. I've been sick like numerous times in the last couple of months. But I'm really interested to hear, like to sustain that commitment over such a long period of time could be quite difficult for some people. Like, how'd you do it?
Yeah. So maybe this one I could credit my dad, because he's like really a fitness guru. Or at least I treat him like a fitness guru. So growing up, he always tried to put us into different sports, have outdoor activities, and he picked a sport like martial arts that he was interested, and he put us into the program. And so I think we did all the competitions but it was not something that I really enjoy. So every time when I go for trainings, I'm like, I'd rather do something else. The trainings are tough. It's so hot in Malaysia. I mean, but we still go through it. But I think what really struck me is like, okay, through that whole process, it made me feel like, okay, exercise is actually important. So I think when I actually start going to Singapore, because I have a lot more free time, I don't live with my parents, I live in a boarding school. That's when I actually start picking up, working out, doing pull-ups, push-ups, etc. And then it started from there, the whole mindset. And I think I want to lead to the point, like a long story short, like my whole fitness transformation journey, it's like not just like in short periods, it's actually sustained to long amounts of time. Yeah, so I think after 4 or 5 years, I got the body that I wanted, and then I think I started to maintain. Mm-hmm. But back to the mindset and also the discipline. Would I say it's discipline? I think yes and no. Like, I think we talk about this, right? It's all putting exercise or fitness as part of your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is like, okay, if it's something that you feel like it's going to take a lot of effort to put in your lifestyle, that's not going to be very natural for you. And eventually you drop off. So I think that the goal is to make exercise to the point that you're going to feel like, oh, if you don't exercise, you feel very bad about yourself because it's not part of, it's something's missing. Yeah. So I think the goal is like, okay, I always advise people like that starting out fitness journey is like, don't be too radical. Don't count your macros, everything. I mean, depends person to person, but I think the more sustainable way is reduce the barrier of you to be able to continue to work out. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not so much about tracking the numbers, the BMI, how many times, the absolute number, how many times you work out a week, but, really integrating and building that as part of your day-to-day life.
Good habits, basically. Mm. Yeah. So of course the numbers and everything is important. So it depends on what timeline you have. I think for a sustainable way, it's really, you want to really work out to the point that, of course, the beginning is going to be unnatural. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. That's something like, okay, when you incorporate something new to your system, it's going to be very uncomfortable. But I'm just saying, like, don't take it to the extreme that makes you feel like, oh, after 3 months, you achieve the body you want, and then do it for the gram, and then, you achieve this weight, etc. I think everyone should just think about, going, unless you're a bodybuilder, then you have to work in seasons. But I think as a general human being, I think just stick to something that works for you and your body. And how to reduce barrier, I can give an example, like something like, okay, picking where your gym is located at. I think that's also something so small can actually affect that thought of, do I want to go to the gym or not? Mm-hmm. Like for me, I go to the gym like right down the street at my place. Mm-hmm. Like I purposely chose that gym is so that like no excuses. Like if I want to work out, just walk down the street and go. So you need to either pick a gym that is close to where you live or close to your office, because that's basically where you spend most of your time. Yeah. And then it's like, just head by to do a quick workout. And yeah, that's how you should go about it. Yeah. Just making it part of your system and be sustainable, because getting that body that you want is easy. Maintaining it for the rest of your life, I think this is a challenge. And like what you mentioned, right, Aaron, like depends on what new events that comes to your life, then you sort of have to recalibrate. And initially you'll find it tough to like, stick to your 5 a.m. workouts every day. Why don't tone it down to 2-3 times a week? And instead of mornings, maybe find some time maybe lunchtime that the baby doesn't work out. But the rule is like, you shift accordingly and make sure that it's easy and sustainable and it's a good commitment to yourself, your body. Yeah.
So instead of going at 5 a.m. in the morning, so I try to go before the baby wakes up now. So when At 70, yeah.
Okay,
Constantly
okay.
recalibrating and adjusting. Hey, I want to hear your perspective. So you've been running your podcast for a while now. You've had many interesting guests on your show, and we've touched upon some of these issues, surprises that people have, expectation mismatch going from teens to adulthood. So I want to hear, I guess, from your side, how do you view, let's talk about relationship, finances, health. I guess we'll talk about health a little bit. How do you view like these sort of things in life? How should people look at them, and how should people prioritize them?
I think this is a very big topic, right? Like, but I think the way that I'll approach it is like everyone is actually different. You have different priorities. Some people like, okay, health to them is not a big factor, but I would say like it is important because it will affect how you view other things. And it's like following the Maslow hierarchies of needs. Health is really right at the bottom, right? Physical safety, food, etc. I think in today's world, like most of the people that are fortunate enough to listen to the podcast, I think all of us already have the basic needs fulfilled. So a lot of the times that why we're listening to podcasts is actually how can we, invest better, do our personal financing better, how we can find something that makes us more fulfilled. Makes what's our vision in life? Yeah, what's the next steps? How do we do better in our career? So, I think all of it are important, but I think just talking to different guests, yeah, not all our topics are a lot on personal finance and all. It's really a particular life event. So even someone that they went through the whole process of coming out, they say like, oh, I'm gay or I'm lesbian, I identify myself, but they grew up in the traditional family, and how they actually still kept their family relationship going, but still have a separate life, a separate identity outside. So I think these kind of stories, how they went through the journey, I think it's important. There are some takeaways and those perspectives that can be brought to the life. And I think why the podcast still works is because, like what we've talked upon in the beginning, like I think a lot of people actually wants to live another life, but they actually live life. And there's a delta. How do they actually get from that point to another point? Hopefully this kind of different stories or journeys of other people that have made it through that can actually inspire them internally and actually internalize it to their life. And then, yeah, if they already can have like some small act or some small move to it, I think it's already a small win for any podcast or like people that actually want to, drive change, whether it's big or small. Yeah.
Anything memorable that you think is worth sharing here? You've had so many conversations with other people, right? I know you just had an emotional episode with one of the the ladies who have suffered from cancer, right? Just want to hear your thoughts out of so many stories you've heard. Anything people should take note of or worth listening to?
If there's pinpoint, like since you mentioned like Tiffany, right? So Tiffany, she has like cervical cancer stage 4, and she's still recovering for it. But I think across all the guests, right, like I'm really like seeing a common theme that you need to, or like I think relationships with your close friends, your family, and also your bosses, your manager, relationship with people in general actually gets them through a lot of the tough times. Yeah. So it might not be the obvious one like your family members or your partner. Sometimes it might be a friend or something. And as long as you open up and provide a safe environment and open up, be vulnerable, I think instead of just looking things from a superficial level, yeah, I think a lot of them actually benefit that, actually there's more. It's easier to find people that you can relate to if you're vulnerable, and you have to take the initiative first, because I think a lot of people, especially in Asia, is like, we have that front that we don't really open up so easily to different people. So having that extra step to open up, to have relationships, to go through tough times, good times, etc. Yeah, I think that's like a common theme. Like everyone going through sharing a particular story, they don't do it alone. Yeah, of course, credits to them, like for them taking the initiative, having that drive, having that discipline, but they don't do it alone. There's always like a group and strong support network that actually helps them, shape them, or like, let's say they want to start a business on their own. Like the idea sometimes doesn't come from themselves. Like this podcast, at least for Talk La, like it wasn't from me, it's from my buddy. And then, yeah, it's really just like putting yourself out there and be vulnerable. And then you get different opportunities that comes to you. It's like what we mentioned, the law of attraction. I really believe in that. So yeah, this is some quick takeaways there.
Hey, how do people show vulnerability? It's definitely a term that we throw around a lot: psychological safety, opening up, be authentic, and all, right? Like when does someone know it's the right time to be vulnerable, and who do you show your vulnerability to? Because obviously, it's not one of these things where you become vulnerable to everyone. Because I think if you're not strategic or not thoughtful about who you want to show your vulnerability to, it could become a distraction.
Yep. That's a great question. And I unfortunately don't have the answer. But I'm actually still learning because you know me, right, Aaron? We're pretty casual. You just know me a couple of weeks and I'm pretty open about my thoughts and everything. But yes, you need to be picky with who you actually be vulnerable and to what extent, right? I think you can, most of the conversations that we have, or let's say you have with a coworker, I think you can share, your thoughts, your perspective, your vision, but down to the actual feeling that you have, I think you have to decide whether you want to open up to that person. Yeah. And I think a good way to think about it is you look at and you see how the person that you're talking to react and resonate. And if they're giving you, some feedback about their perspective, their life, and if it sort of resonates with you, I think there's some sort of gut feeling. I can't put it to words, but I think who are your true friends, true allies that you can rely on, after just a couple of conversations. Yeah. And I mean, if you want to do some due diligence, you can see track record, how does this person get a lot of news? Do they share out a lot of other people's stuff? Then I think you can make that call accordingly, because you have to pick who you want to be vulnerable with and open up with. Yeah, because these are the people that down the road maybe potentially open doors for you for other things. And hopefully it's a two-way thing. Yeah, you guys go through the same situation together.
Yeah. Hey, you're a kind-hearted guy. I remember over our lunch, we spoke about kindness, giving back to the community, just helping people, giving back, and not worry about what we're going to get returned. How can we get more kindness in the world that we are today? And one of the things that I guess I've been advocating is that even though we are getting more and more connected digitally, I feel that at least on a human level, we're less connected. We are actually more. Do you agree with this statement? And what are your thoughts on how we can spread more kindness? And other than just doing podcasts, right? If there's one takeaway you feel our listeners should just start doing differently today or tomorrow, what could that be?
I think to your statement, right? Whether are we more remote? We have a lot of different touch points. Yeah. Does it make us distant from each other? I think yes and no. I'm a firm believer, and I think we chat about this, that social media is actually a great place to connect with people at a deeper level. Yeah. And for me, I actually leverage on that. Of course, there's stuff that you're going to be friends that you're just seeing, and then you see their stuff, you have updates about them, whether it's positive or negative stuff. Something that I haven't done it is because I've heard that you probably want to unfollow people or take out certain friends that you feel you don't want them or don't want to see their stories, etc. So I haven't done that. I haven't did that cleansing. Maybe because I'm kind that way, like what you mentioned. But I feel that if there's one takeaway, how to approach this, how to connect people at a deeper level, is really about the mindset shift. Yeah, you can't just change your mindset like that, right? You have to think about, okay, maybe you're not a person that really wants to meet a lot of people, etc. Then probably social media is not a great place. But I think my point is you need to align your mindset with sort of the life goals or life fulfillment or some sort of direction that you want. And for me, it's I really want to connect with like-minded people or people that are different but have some sort of value. If they're willing to explore, I don't mind meeting them, having a chat, connecting with them at a deeper level. So social media for me is good, because I think, being across, I have friends in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Hong Kong. Yeah. And I think it's a good place to really stay in touch and keep connected. I think back then, I would actually, if I was born in a different era, probably I'll just be circled, in different societies and all. So I think social media is really powerful in that sense. And let's say you want to connect with someone really outside your friend circle, you have access to that. Social media is great. Yeah. So these, I think, is one of the greatest power of social media. And then just a message, and if they reciprocate, we reaching out to podcast guests every now and then, you'll be surprised how many, if you put yourself out there, actually a lot of people are
willing to help.
Quite invested. Yeah, they're quite invested to actually help. Whether your podcast is big or not, if they buy your mission, the purpose, and we have the mindset that, oh, we actually want to share out their story and perspective, I think that's really powerful. And that's one of the reasons why the podcast has been running week after week for almost 1 year. And I don't see any signs like, oh, when I'll actually stop.
Yeah.
And together with my co-host, we hope, together with you, Aaron, hopefully we can get you on one day, and then we can, have a larger share of voice and, make a impact, whether big or small, to the world.
Yeah. And you make your podcast as part of your lifestyle, right? Like what you said in the beginning. So it doesn't feel like a chore or work you have to do on the side.
Yeah. And there's no harm just meeting someone new or connecting with an old friend or like a previous manager for a weekend morning.
Yeah. Hey, before we wrap up, I got one more question I forgot to ask you. You're a positive guy. Where is your source of positivity, and where do you go for inspiration? Do you meditate, or do you just go and work out when you're having your off days?
So I think a lot of people, I do have my down days. Yeah, maybe I come across as positive, but I'm generally quite an optimistic person. When I have some challenges, I always will think, positive. But I think like recently at work, when some things I cannot solve, where do I get back my passion and positivity? I think it's really like I'm grounded by people, to be honest. Yeah. So I think currently, like I recently just got engaged. So my fiance is actually a big part of that. My family, I'm grateful that we provide and we connect at a level, but they understand my challenge. They may not understand the work specific, but they're able to add on that. And I think it's a great plus point, because I don't take this for granted. I think a lot of people they're not so close with their parents and etc. So for me, it's really grounded by the people. Or when I meet someone new and I get a new perspective from there and how I can internalize it to do better, I think that's really my source of positiveness in life. Yeah, whether it's like downtime or what. Yeah, and I do like I really enjoy meeting new people. Like when I had lunch with you, I'm like, wow, Aaron, great guy, great story. Yeah, when can I get you on the podcast? Yeah,
I'm not sure what I said over lunch. Hopefully, I didn't say something silly. Hey, thank you so much for taking your time out to come and have a chat with me today. Very inspirational, and you're my second podcaster on this podcast. And I didn't know there's so many podcasters in Hong Kong, but it's great. I think I never listened to podcasts, but since I started my own podcast, I realized that just by listening and, like you said, actively listening and opening up and meeting new people, it has really opened up a lot more possibilities and opportunities. And it has definitely helped me learn and grow as a person. And there are so many, people out there who are willing to learn and willing to invest their time to help you. And I think all the listeners, all we need to do is just to ask and to give back, and something will return, one form or another.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite, Aaron. Appreciate it. Hopefully, me being first time as a guest was fruitful for your audiences.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, take care, buddy, and I'll see you soon.
All right, bye-bye.